Are you seeing continued evidence that Amazon is sort of moving more and more folks into FBM, and being sort of less focused on growing their sort of vendor relationships?
Yeah. So actually, so most of the people I talk to are brands that have hired in-house marketing teams, which is why they want to use SmartScout, right? Or e-commerce teams, and they're moving away from Amazon. Now, I do talk to people within Amazon, not as frequently as I do with brands and agencies that are moving away from Vendor Central. Now, I don't know if that's a direct indicator of what's happening within internally Amazon, but I do know Amazon puts a huge focus on their Vendor Central. That's obviously a large part of their business, but it is interesting. I've seen a big migration away from Vendor Central and brands moving to Seller Central.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm super excited to be chatting today with Zack Edgmon, who is enterprise sales, I believe, at SmartScout. I had a chance to have a conversation with him at an event recently, and it was fascinating what they had built. So we'll start off, Zack, with what's the elevator pitch for SmartScout for folks who are not familiar with your platform and your brand.
Totally. Well, thanks for having me on, Kevin. Yeah, so at the core, what SmartScout is we are a top to bottom data analytics software for the Amazon space. So what that means is, I talk to clients from, if you have any business on Amazon, I'm kind of talking to you, whether you're M&A, aggregator, accelerator, brand, even like insurance agencies that, try to land, whoever else for clientele. But at the core is a top to bottom bird's eye view of the Amazon marketplace, which enables you to make a little bit more data driven, data backed decisions. So, yeah.
Great. Well, I've noticed that Amazon itself has started to surface a little bit more information for the consumer as the consumer looks at listings, which of course is also of great interest to marketers on Amazon, whether they're FBM or FBA, with regards to sales velocity, with regards to sales numbers. Obviously, you can look at the number of ratings. So which KPIs and information points are in SmartScout that would help somebody who's active within the Amazon ecosystem really learn more about what's going on there?
Basically, what we do is we look at the sales rank of each of the products within Amazon, and then we actually look at that on a historical timeline. So that's one of the main tools that people utilize SmartScout for identifying opportunities, different indicators of what's happening within the Amazon ecosystem. So when it comes to revenue numbers, units sold, all of that, we do look at that sales rank again historically, but we also have information on actual paid advertisements, sponsored advertisements, sponsored products, or not sponsored products, sponsored search terms, all of that, to where a lot of our heavier clientele can actually make pretty informed decisions on new opportunities, or obviously wanting to outcompete their competition.
So one thing that's always sort of perplexed me a little bit when I look at Amazon data is obviously there are sometimes ASINs that are like very similar to each other, right? Or it's like one model that's out of, no longer in production, and then there's a newer version of the model. And is there any way that people can sort of understand the relative sales velocities of sort of the replacement product for something, or one product that's maybe, going out of stock because they're no longer making it, whether it's a model of a TV or a model of a phone or whatever, or like, can you combine together more than one SKU when you look at the data, or are you really just looking at a specific product's sales velocity by itself?
Yeah, it's a killer question. So that's actually an issue that a lot of Amazon sellers do run into, because what will happen is one product, right? Like let's think of like a Dove soap bars, right? They might come out with new packaging, and one big business on Amazon is wholesale.
Hmm.
So what these people will do is they'll have all this inventory of Dove, but then the packaging changes, right? Dove changes the packaging, and now everything is flipped on its head. so yeah, when it comes to any business within it, as these things move and shake and they rotate, um, one really great way is Amazon actually they frequently update their BSR. So when these replacement models come out, because so much of our information is based off of and relative to the BSR, it's easy for us to BSR sales rank. It's easy for us to kind of pivot with that, right? So when you're looking at SmartScout over time, you're able to kind of see um, how new product lines are doing, the product lines that are starting to die out because things have changed, things have gone out of stock. In our case, Dove, they might have changed packaging, right? You'll see some out of stocks from the wholesalers and all of that. So the ebbs and flows, it's pretty in line with what's happening within the Amazon ecosystem. And when you actually kind of see the graphs that we provide, it's pretty easy to quickly understand and tell a story of what's happened.
Cool, cool. I'm sure that a lot of your customers are using your platform to identify opportunities. So are there any common big missed opportunities that Amazon sellers need to take action on that they're not?
It's a great question. So it really depends on who I'm talking to within the Amazon ecosystem. An agency will find different opportunities than, of course, a brand, and then a brand will find different than, of course, a wholesaler. I would say, just in general, understanding the presence that Vendor Central has over Seller Central is going to be huge for also identifying opportunities that you might want to stay away from, right? I see very frequently where large brands come into a subcategory that Amazon might own 60, 70% of, and they're aware of that, but they don't understand how much that can be detrimental to the brand, which might indicate a good pivot point, might indicate new opportunities. Now, that's probably same with wholesalers, same with agencies. Understanding where Amazon.com has its presence, Vendor Central, is going to really help you make actual successful decisions, right? Whether you are one of those brands that's in Vendor Central or not. Understanding where your market is, that's going to help you out more than anything else.
Right. Are you seeing continued evidence that Amazon is sort of moving more and more folks into FBM and being sort of less focused on growing their sort of vendor relationships?
Yeah. So actually, most of the people I talk to are brands that have hired in-house marketing teams, which is why they want to use SmartScout, right? Or e-commerce teams, and they're moving away from Amazon. Now, I do talk to people within Amazon, not as frequently as I do with brands and agencies that are moving away from Vendor Central. Now, I don't know if that's a direct indicator of what's happening within internally Amazon, but I do know Amazon puts a huge focus on their Vendor Central. That's obviously a large part of their business, but it is interesting. I've seen a big migration away from Vendor Central and brands moving to Seller Central. I know this is talked about all over LinkedIn, all over social media, but that is one of the biggest trends that I've seen in my role and talking to the caliber and quality of the clients that I deal with on a daily basis. So yeah, I guess I can't speak too much to, if Amazon is ignoring their Vendor Central and moving to the other places, but I can speak to the Vendor Central brands taking over their own presence.
Yeah, well, I can certainly see why a brand might want to. The biggest factor for me, owning a brand of my own, not that they offered me a vendor relationship, they didn't, but control over price and control over promotion is a lot easier when you're in an FBA/FBM environment versus when Amazon owns your inventory and decides what price to put it in at.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the biggest reasons people move is they want to get away from the control of Amazon. That gets kind of frustrating. So, and I totally understand. I'll have 2-hour conversations with people just venting to me about the frustrations that they experience from Amazon, and the account managers that they're assigned from Amazon, they might not have as much as much communication as they wish, and just there's a lot of weird nuances, and you've been in the space, you have your own brand. I'm sure you've seen it. You were at our last conference, and yeah, lots of frustrating conversations coming through.
So when folks, are going to sit down and they're going to use SmartScout or potentially one of the inferior competitors, if there is any such thing, but when they're going to use any platform and they're really starting to sort of delve in and they want to focus their product research, right, in order to identify opportunities, how should they focus their efforts, right? Because you guys essentially could provide data overload if like there's a lot of data there, right? And so how
Yeah.
should they sit down and sort of start digging into the data for their particular products and their particular categories?
So that's totally true. That's a big reason why I give these demos is because it's so easy to be swamped in data. Our competitors, they have their strengths, they have their weaknesses, and we do too, right? I think our biggest benefit is that top to bottom, like I was explaining a little bit earlier. And that's the main reason why if you were to come in, log into SmartScout today, you didn't know anything about it, with the idea of it being a top to bottom approach is going to serve you so much better than the standard like product research tools. So when it comes to like actual like navigation and understanding it and not getting lost in the data, the best approach is just like from a brand perspective, for example, you want to dive into your subcategory and see what's happening there, and it's gonna set you on a much more successful path using SmartScout. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest shames with people that dive into SmartScout is they can get overloaded with the data and a little bit swamped when they could be making some pretty killer decisions, that can really help out pivot.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed is obviously everybody starts at the keyword level, right? And the keyword level starts at the brand, right? And then it's at the product descriptor level. But once you sort of maximize your opportunity, at the keyword level and the product descriptor level, right? The next thing that everyone wants to try to figure out how to crack is competitive conquest, right? Being
Yeah.
on somebody else's product page as advertising on their ASIN, right? So how should folks can people use a Smart Scout to sort of help them identify those conquest opportunities?
Yeah, totally. That's a really fun conversation to have, just because everyone wants to everyone wants to out pivot their competition, and being able to see what the competition's doing is huge. But being able to also see, so Amazon has like a unique internal algorithm with the frequently bought together pane, and we have something that's the name of it is traffic graph, and basically what it's doing is we've reverse engineered that to show consumer buying habits from like a competitive standpoint. So if somebody clicks into, I mean, we can go back to like the Dove soap bar, right? Somebody wants to go buy a Dove soap bar, and the frequently bought together pane, they might have like a loofah, they might have, I don't know, a soap holder, and that
Or a
right there
shampoo
just
or a shampoo brand, right? Yeah.
yep, there you go. Exactly. So like down there, yeah, shampoo. That's a pretty killer opportunity for you to then come in and obviously advertise on the different frequently bought together panes down below,
Yep.
because Amazon's indicated a lot of traffic being driven to that. So yeah, I mean there's a lot of really, just understanding like the data behind it, I think is gonna, like, those kind of fun opportunities, competitive analysis, taking over competition. It's a fun conversation to have, and there's a lot of fun points that we can take advantage of. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing that again, a lot of brands have this sort of love-hate relationship with Amazon because it is the e-commerce search engine essentially, right? That's where people start their e-commerce search. But at the same time, there's still Google and a few other smaller search engines that people still use. So a lot of merchants and brands are still sort of trying to find that perfect balance between their own e-commerce store, whether it's on Shopify or Magento or BigCommerce or one of this a custom platform, even Woo, right? And so they have a secondary, place to sell. Are there any ways that you can use the data in Smart Scout to inform your strategies outside of Amazon?
That's a good question. So Smart Scout, it's Amazon specific data. We don't have any information on like Google, on Walmart, anything like that.
Right.
However, trends do tend to be closely correlated. Obviously, for some odd, or for a lot of circumstances, that's not the case, but for a lot, that is the case, right? So when it comes to outside Amazon search optimization and paid advertisements, I can't speak too much on that. SmartScout can't speak too much on that. But again, if you're looking for just correlation numbers, yeah, we've got that for sure. We've got estimated searches, cost per click, all of that stuff that is happening within Amazon. But I guess try to use that as an indicator.
Yeah, I think actually where I might use it now, I may have to test this, but you know, one of the layers of Amazon's having an Amazon presence is the Amazon SEO, right? Having the right keywords in your product
Yeah.
copy to try to take advantage of how well Amazon ranks for things. But those same keywords and themes that you're trying to rank your Amazon store or product pages for could conceivably also be same keywords you want to rank for your Shopify store, for example. So there may be ways to use your data to inform your SEO strategy. So I'll have to take a deeper dive into that.
Yeah, totally.
Any fun stories about your clients using the platform to sell wholesale, and where they've just been able to take some overstock situation and take on that inventory and really hit home runs with it?
Yeah, totally. So we've got lots of different success stories. I would say one that actually happened earlier this week or early last week was I was talking to somebody, I ran into him, and I've been at SmartScout for about 2 years. I had a conversation with this guy about a year and a half ago, and he was just barely getting started. And I was talking to him, and he just barely passed his $60,000 MRR, or $60,000 of revenue that he got from his Amazon store. And the main tool that he's used, I mean, he uses the other tools like Keepa and Seller Board and whatnot, but his main data research tool for identifying brands that he wants to work with was SmartScout. So that was kind of cool. That kind of gave me some direct proof, and that's cool that you asked that, because I just barely had a conversation, and I was talking to somebody else within SmartScout about that, because yeah, it's cool to see that. I don't know if he's been able to fully quit his day job, but I hope he can soon. I mean, I love my day job, so I'm not like against those at all, but talking to him, that was kind of his goal, right? Was to be able to move away from 9 to 5 and then work his own 9 to 5. So yeah, it sounds like he's getting there. And yeah, it's cool to actually see like a real life, start and then accelerated part of somebody's Amazon journey. So
Are there any folks? I mean, it was hard for me to tell because the event we met at was very wholesale focused, right? But are there an entire suite of people who simultaneously are doing their own brands and wholesale, or is it really sort of the wholesalers and the DTC folks who are like separate animals?
yeah, so there actually is quite a bit of crossover between the two. There are brands that like to just be, these are typically brands that come from like a Shopify store, or, been around for a while, that come onto Amazon. But then this is something that I see a lot of, are wholesalers that are pretty successful, that have a lot of capital, and then they start venturing into private label. And they might launch one or two, three or four private label companies. And now they kind of have two different aspects of the Amazon game that they really start to benefit from, and really drive a good revenue stream and a good cash cow from one or two of them. Now, yeah, there is surprisingly quite a bit of crossover. I think that's kind of the whole evolution of an Amazon seller. They go from online arbitrage or retail arbitrage, online arbitrage. They get down to the wholesale approach. They move to private label, and then some of them move on to their own agency. So it's kind of fun to see that. But yeah.
Interesting. Does it also go the other direction? Do some folks come in initially as a DTC brand and then decide that they also want to go wholesale?
I'm sure that happens. I haven't really been a part of a conversation that much where they come in as a brand and then they move to wholesale. I might be missing out on one or two conversations that I've had, but yeah, for the most part, it's typically wholesale that goes to brands, not really brands that go to wholesale. So yeah.
When it's a DTC brand and it's a private label, brand that's specific, and the folks are using the platforms and they're active in FBA in general, are there any interesting success stories or best practices as it relates to a specific brand where you own and control the brand, as opposed to when you're a wholesaler and you're essentially competing on the same SKU?
Totally. It's the interaction between sellers that are selling a brand and the brand doesn't want them. it's always kind of a fun interaction. A few months ago, I was on a call with a larger brand, and we were looking, and they were kind of expressing their frustration about unauthorized resellers. And we clicked on it, and I actually recognized one of the stores as a friend of mine that's in the Amazon space. So kind of funny, and they were talking about how they wanted to get all of these guys unlisted and kicked off. But yeah, that interaction, it's unless a brand is comfortable with resellers, it tends to be a little bit hostile. So
that was an area that I was new to me, to be honest. The extent to which the inventory is essentially resurfacing, right? That had made its way through the channel and for whatever reason was an overstock and made its way back into Amazon to be resold there. So it's a fascinating area. I learned a lot at the event. Learned a lot chatting with you and your team as well. I was just sort of curious whether there were lessons there that could be learned for the private label DTC marketers, specific to being in the hyper competitive environment of competing against your own brand name, right, versus competing against somebody else, right? So Dove soap and Ivory soap may compete with each other, right? But so when Dove is competing with Dove, it's a slightly different dynamic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's there's different strategies. There's agencies out there that can help out. There's legal agencies that try to get people like legally unlisted, and then obviously try to talk to Amazon and stuff like that. Yeah, the larger the brand, the more you see it. Well, it makes sense, but yeah, it's especially brands that are coming from like outside of Amazon that eventually land inside of it. They'll run into this issue like crazy, and they'll deploy like an entire team just to focus on getting these guys off of their brands. So yeah, when it comes to success stories, I mean, SmartScout has a pretty good like visualization and showing of the buy box and like the overall revenue that each of these sellers are capturing from your brand. So if there's brands listening, right, if they're always curious about this, we can actually look that up in SmartScout and see how much control they have of your brand. Actually, one thing that this is such a big pain point is because, if you are a brand and Zack Edgmon, if I go and buy one of your products and I mess up the packaging and then I send that to a customer, right, as a wholesaler, it can harm your brand image a little bit. So yeah, there's so many different nuances, and of course a brand wants to control their own brand. So
right. So what has you excited about the next year? It can be product specific, or it can be ecosystem specific, or just the general online marketing ecosystem, if there's something that you're watching pretty carefully.
Yeah. So internally, I'm the enterprise guy, and it's exciting because SmartScout, we're starting to put an emphasis on pushing our enterprise level tools. So that's really exciting for me, just more of on a personal level, I guess, from like a whole overall ecosystem. Amazon, I feel like this time last year, so many things were different, and it's exciting. Also, it can be a little scary to see what Amazon decides to do a year from now. They're really starting to put a big emphasis and push on Amazon Freight, Amazon Full Service. They're kind of taking over different segments that people would have to outsource previously, or at least pushing it a little bit heavier. With like the pay on Amazon, I'm excited to see how that goes. I've talked to a lot of people that are very excited to start using that within their Shopify stores. I think there's going to be a lot of excitement coming out of it. So yeah, from the ecosystem perspective, I'm excited to see what happens. And then obviously from the SmartScout perspective, I'm really excited to see new developments that the team, that we kind of put our heads together and, push out. So.
Great. Well, I look forward to watching SmartScout's continued evolution. Are there any shows you guys will be at where if people are active in the Amazon community that they could sort of run into you and your team?
Yeah, totally. So one show we like to go to Prosper. We go to, obviously we just hosted our own event, AMZ United. We'll be doing that next year. I believe it will be probably in Jersey again. Let's see. We go to the Accelerates Pattern's Accelerate as well as Amazon's Accelerate. I was just there last week in Seattle. That was pretty cool. A lot of new announcements there. Um, some of the teams going to Unboxed here in a week or so. I'm not going to go, but yeah, it's kind of if there's an Amazon conference going on or e-commerce conference, there's probably a good 60 to 70% chance that myself or somebody on the SmartScout team is going to be there. So yeah, if you know any conferences coming up, keep an eye out for the guy with the mustache. I'll probably be there. So
Sounds good. I appreciate you sharing your insights with me, and look forward to keeping in touch.
well, yeah, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you having me on, man.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.